If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning and welcome to the February the 14th edition of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby. And right off the bat, we thank you for tuning in to today's program and giving it a listen. If you'd like to be a participant in today's show, just dial this number, 516-453-9921, and press the number 1 button. And when you do, give the call screener your name. Your name will come up so that I can give you the proper introduction. And if you are a first-time caller, make sure you tell that to the call screener, and he or she will let me know that a new caller is on the line and we have something special for you. You can also join the chat room by going to blogtalkradio.com. You want to make sure that you click on where it says programs, and when you do that, click that on, and the Produce Justice show will come up, and you click on that, and you are in the chat room. And you can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, Bobby, at gmail.com. And if I have time today, I will read your Gmail. Most of the time, it's not going to be on today's program, but it will be on a program, and I will let you know by sending you a symbol. Okay. For those who have missed Mr. Fuller, pardon me, who was on the Carl Nelson show last Thursday, it is up and on the website at producejustice.com, so you may want to give that a listen, and you can do that. And one more thing. All the books and materials that are going to be discussed today, you can get that by going to producejustice.com, and somewhere in today's 2-hour program, we will give Mr. Fuller the opportunity to speak a little bit about the book. And you can get the book, again, by going to producejustice.com. Okay, I think all that is out of the way. Okay, Black to Death, thank you for being in the chat room, along with Emery. Haven't missed you. Luumba, thank you. Okay, let me introduce to some and present to others Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Mr. Fuller, how are you this morning?
I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Okay, for those who are new to the show, we have a little segment where we call the thoughts and expressions on the mind of Neely Fuller, Jr. And Mr. Fuller, what are your thoughts or expressions that are on your mind this morning?
It's been all over the place. So many things going on, but things remain the same. So I've been coming back to where a lot of the listeners of this program have been, in a way of speaking, coming back to from the reports that I'm getting. And that is, we want the best minds, the very best minds, and that doesn't include me, but wherever they are, whomever they are, the very center on solutions to the race problem. We're just pecking all around the edges of the race problem, it seems to be, to me. That's where my thoughts are. Just pecking around the edges like forever, like not getting to the core of anything. And just everybody having a high and low and somewhere in between, then back to the high again, then back to the low again. and then the crying time again, and that's just about every day. And then spend an hour or two, for let's show how mad we are. And then, okay, look at the next schedule, do a little bit of laughing, then do a whole lot of laughing, and then come back to how much we should love each other. And then it's crying time again. And then getting back to let's peck around the edges some more. Are we serious or not? Is anybody serious? Or are we just playing games? Or just some kind of, just something to do? We're talking about a problem. A nagging problem. A horrendous problem. We're talking about one of the worst problems that have ever confronted the people of the planet Earth in the history of the planet Earth. And that's this thing that we keep calling, either directly or indirectly, the race problem. And we just act like it's something that you do when you're not doing something else, like partying. Well, let's talk about the race problem for a little while, and then get back to partying. Something really serious. Ha, ha, ha. Find something funny to laugh at. Are we crazy? And the answer is yes. This is crazy as we can be. That's what my thoughts are. And when I say we, who am I talking about? I'm talking about everybody on the planet. Balloons flying over places, and some balloons is all about being happy. Fixing to get married, let's have a lot of balloons. Then you got a whole lot of balloons hanging on a fence behind. Who got killed last night? I know somebody got killed here in this neighborhood. Who was it? But maybe in a couple of weeks it's going to be me. Okay, that's the kind of world we're in. So there's going to be some balloons on the fence about that. Then I understand that in the news, when you turn it on while you're eating your pork chops, if you got any, you got some Chinese that are sending up some balloons. So let's get a fight on about that. Send something up and shout them out. Let's get an argument going. Next thing you know, we got some real shooting in the South China Sea. Meanwhile, we got an earthquake here. Let's check the statistics. Crazy about keeping body counts. That term body count became kind of prominent during the Vietnam era. Let's see what the body count is for today. What do you mean body count? The number of people who were killed. Stalin is reported to have said, Joseph Stalin of Russia, said that when one person dies, it's a tragedy. When thousands die, it's statistics. 35,000 people, that's the count, what I heard, from an earthquake. Ho-hum. Turn the page in the newspaper, change the channel. Now here's some real news. Got a game show. Somebody just won $100. Everybody applaud. Turn on the applaud machine. This is the kind of world we are in. And we have found it not only acceptable, but something to be embraced, apparently, forever. That's just the way the world is right now. It's just about where it ought to be in the minds of most people. If anybody's being logical, very little that's going on this planet that should be acceptable to anybody who's just a little bit sober. And there's no hand clapping and laughing time at all. If we are serious people, if we take our Creator, whatever we call God, to be serious. Because our religions have become sloppy and hand clapping and foot stomping, and that's it. No problem solving, not 1 ounce of seriousness, all show business, not serious about nothing. That's what's on my mind. But I'm also saying, getting back to some of what the listeners are saying, is that white people are going to have an honest talk with black people without anybody getting mad or shouting or using profanity and just going back and forth accusing one another of doing this and doing that, going all back in history and bringing it right up front about the latest police shooting, and like that's some type of fad. That's like going to a football game, talk about that for 15 minutes, and then switch over to the sports page. Well, yes. Are we insane? And the answer is, if you follow the logic, from what I see, super over the top insanity. And I'm talking about all the creatures on this planet, every last one without exception. Can't find a sane person nowhere. And I'll start with myself. There's no way to be sane in this type of situation. It's out of the question. Talking about sending someone to the insane asylum. You're talking about the entire planet. If you're being logical, just a halfway thoughtful person, just look at what everybody's doing each and every day. Do you see anything that you can really call sensible? Just a little bit. All this technology, we got a lot of that. Now, we do have the technology. Lots of it, tons of it, more of it coming down the pipe. And I've read some articles that said that by 2030, you're going to see technology have breakthroughs like you've never seen before. All new type of gadgets. But when it comes to people, treating people, interacting with people for 2 minutes in any kind of way that makes any kind of sense, it's getting harder and harder and harder to find. And that is insanity. And that's what's on my mind.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. 516-453-9921 is the number to get in contact with the show. Press the number 1 button if you have a question. And please, when you do, as this person in the 718 prefix, please give the call screener your name so that I can properly give you an introduction. In the meantime, we'll go to Cleo in Houston. And Cleo, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Long live NFJ and forever live Logic. As always, so appreciative and thankful to you, Mr. Bobby, Robert, Sharon, and Moon Pie for your partnership with Mr. Fuller in this very important life work. Mr. Fuller, I hear the frustration in your voice regarding the madness and insanity that is this global power system construct that we find ourselves having been born into, and trying to solve the humongous problem that it is. I, too, share those sentiments and daily awaken with an understanding, thanks to you, and what you have taught and what you have shared in your books. I have all three, by the way, and would recommend that everybody get all three, anybody who considers themselves a victim of racism, white supremacy. Mr. Fuller, how do you suggest we go about pushing the conversation with white people, even non-white people, when both are so resistant and opposed to even having a conversation, let alone doing those things that are necessary to replace the system of white supremacy with a system of justice? How would you suggest going about that when others just kind of shut you down or doesn't want to talk about it because we're so insane?
I think an excellent start would be what I've been saying recently for the last year or so, and I do a lot of thinking, a lot of note taking. I look at a lot of television when I can. I listen to a lot of radio. I just keep switching television channels, seeing what's going on, trying to keep up with everything. And I keep centering on something that one of the last entries I made in the 2016 edition, revised, expanded edition of the textbook for white supremacy. And that is just a simple thing. I mean, out of the whole textbook, 171 and 172, those are the page numbers. And I could have extended that much longer, but I tell people here on the air that those four questions, starting with page 171 and going into page 172, that each and every person should ask him or herself. That's each and every person on the planet, wherever that person might be on the planet. Syria during the earthquakes, Turkey, what's going on, and somebody got shot in Massachusetts last night, another mass shooting, which is getting to be a regular thing. Mass shootings among black people everywhere that anybody's got a gun, and lots of black people got guns. Anywhere you find us, it's going to be some shooting going on, and all of this type of thing. People arguing back and forth about this and that. Male, female can't get along about nothing. So what do you do? Page 171, 172. And what's on those pages? Well, there are four questions that a person, first of all, should ask him or herself, or thine self, or how many selves there are. It's getting to be more and more different type of selves, so they tell me. So it's not just himself and herself anymore. We're going past that. We get into what are the four questions. And everyone should wake up every morning and then all day long ask yourself these four questions before you do anything or while you're in the midst of doing whatever you're doing. What do I want to do? Because every creature has wants. Every waking second, every moment that you're awake, or half awake. If you're half awake, your first one is you want to wake up fully or go back to sleep. Depends on what your priorities are or what you can do. So what do I want to do? That's the first question. Each and every day, all day. What do I want to do? More than anything else, what do I want to do? Number two, why do I want to do it? Now, these are very, 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 very important questions. May not seem like it, but they are. Why do I want to do this thing that I want to do? Number three, how do I plan to do it? Now, that's when it really gets rough by the time you get to number three of those questions. Particularly, for black people. Because black people, we are not known to be planners at all. We don't like to think about planning anything. We can answer that first question pretty fast. What do I want to do? We're real fast about that. Man, I want to get out of here and get that money that dude owed me. I'm gonna do a job on him. He don't pay him that money today. See, so you want to get that money today. All right. We always want to know what we want to do from 1 minute to the next. Or we think we know anyway. We want to do something. Why do we want to do it? Now, it gets kind of, it gets kind of difficult for a lot of black people to handle that second question. Why do I want to do it? Why do you want to do this thing you want to do? Whatever it is. And then when it gets to number 3, it really gets rough. How do you plan to do it? Because like I just said, with black people in particular, we don't like planning. We just like, run around in a circle. Just do something. Don't make no difference what it is. We ain't got no plan. We want to do it, but we ain't got no plan for doing it. Just do anything that looks like it's heading in that direction. Well, I ain't got time to be thinking about no plan. Okay. So then we get to the 4th question. What do I expect to be the constructive result for what I want to do? If I get done everything that I want done, what do I expect the constructive result? CR. That's what you should think about. Necessarily have to add a T to it, CRT. But you can say constructive result, truth. Tell yourself the truth. What do I expect the constructive result to be if I get what I want or do what I want done? Killing somebody or getting a job or going off to school. How did I plan to do it? What do I expect the constructive result to be? Now, when we talk to each other, that's black people talking to other black people or non-white people, and talking to white people. If everybody asks those 4 questions, everybody who is going to be interacting with each other, I think that's an answer to the question. I took a long way around to do it, but it's central. Because we do a lot of talking, but it's not something to really think seriously about. We can do less talk if we get to the core of issues by just centering on just a few things rather than thousands of things and come right back where we started from. But I think if everybody on the planet starts getting in the habit of asking themselves those 4 questions and then ask everybody else those 4 questions, everybody will wind up right where they should be. Now, that's a theory. We're talking about critical race theory and all this type of thing, whatever that means. But that's a theory that I believe will work for everybody, white and non-white, male and female, all others in between. We're talking about gender. And all other people in every area of activity. You just don't confine those 4 questions to one area of activity. And I have 9 of them as listed in the book. Economics, if you talk about economics, those 4 questions, they'll lead everybody right where they should be by the answers. And you don't argue about the answers. There's a science to it. Don't argue about the answers. Just be ready with the next question. Because if you get answers to those 4 questions from each and every person that you interact with, now this is the theory, the answers will come. You just keep asking those 4 questions over and over again. Don't budge. And you can ask other questions, but always use those 4 questions as the core of anything that you're having in a conversation. And it will always, this is the theory, always, not sometimes, always, take everybody right where they should be, based on what? What people want. And people want something all the time. So those 4 questions that are associated with wants.
All right.
You can ask and answer questions in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and more. It'll take everybody right where they should be. It won't take everybody where they want to be, but it'll take them where they should be. That's anybody. Now, that's the theory, and I think that theory will prove itself if I, like I'm trying to do right now, get more people to do that. Just start doing that, those 4 questions, with everybody to interact with all day long, starting with yourself. And then when you talk to someone else, if you know them well enough and they're willing to talk about anything, put those 4 questions in there. That'll take everybody right where they need to be.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, and thank you, Cleo. I'm sure that Robert and Moon Pie and Sharon and whoever else is associated with. Thank you also. I'm going to take a little station break here, so let's do this. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and we thank you for listening. To get in contact with the show, if you have a question or comment, just simply call 516-453-9921. Press the number 1 button so that we can know who you are to ask your question, and make sure you give your name to the call screener. First-time callers, be sure to tell the call screener your name, and then they will indicate to me that you are a first-time caller, and we will get you on. Chat room is available. Just go to blogtalkradio.com, and you want you're searching for programs. Click that, and then the Produce Justice show will come up, and you click that, and you're in the chat room and can be a part of whatever the conversation is in there. And you can also do this. You can go to my Gmail, just the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com, and I will give you the symbol when I receive it, and at a certain date and time it will be read, and I will also inform you of that. Okay, Mr. Fuller was on the Carl Nelson Show last Thursday. That is up and available on the ProduceJustice.com website, so you may want to do that. And also any books, as Mr. Fuller had reference to in speaking to Cleo from Houston about the 4 wants on page 171 and 172. That's in the code book, and you can get that by going to ProduceJustice.com. That's ProduceJustice.com. Okay, back to the phone lines, and let's go to George. Looks like you got a new number, George. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Oh, hi, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller. The question is I'm trying to see if I could get compensation because, as I called before on the show, I was removed from my job. I was mistreated on the job, and then they refused to pay me my severance. So I'm trying to get some compensation. So what's happening is that the white supremacists are getting people to impersonate lawyers, and then they want me to sign stuff, and then I have to go pay thousands of dollars. And I caught them, and now this time they're using a non-white person who's supposed to be a lawyer, who's supposed to represent the people that they're being hired, and not this person is
coming in kind of broken up. So what is your question, please?
Mr. Fuller, what do I do if I try to get compensation and for being fired from a job and I didn't get compensation, and then the white supremacists keep jerking me around and not allowing me to be paid my compensation?
You have to go back. You have to go back to the laws. Because see, my whole book is about compensation. So you see what they say, going to the Fifth Amendment. If you're in the Northwestern Hemisphere, that's where you're calling from. They have what they call the Constitution. So the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. Try going and using that tool. Look up the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. If that's where your litigation, that's what the lawyers are under, what they call the Constitution of the United States of America. That's what it's called. Okay? So according to the code book, anytime somebody mentions anything about compensation, the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America is the tool section that you employ. And you say you have reason to believe it may have been violated. And you start from there. And then it's going to trail on and on and on from there. That's been my experience. But that's the only tool you got. So you started out mentioning, once you mention that word compensation, that goes straight to, in the Northwestern Hemisphere, under the Constitution of what is called the United States of America. You use that tool. The law of compensation, according to what I've written, is wherever you are on the planet, you first go by whatever the laws are and wherever you happen to be. And if you are under what they call the United States, you have been told that you have allegiance to the United States Constitution, then that's what you go to, because you are, if you're a person of color, a prisoner of war, wherever you are on the planet. So whomever's in charge or whatever segment of the white supremacist system, and you're always under the white supremacist system, you listen to them and find out, well, if I'm dealing with compensation, what tools do you have to deal with compensation? You ask that question. And people who are said to be lawyers and all like that, if they'll tell you, they'll say, oh, well, you got a Constitution that covers that. And you say, well, what part of the Constitution? And what is a Constitution? And you can ask all these questions, which you should, and they'll tell you. Say, well, these are the laws that apply to you and your problem. They're the bottom line. Once you go to that, you have gone as far as you can go. And you say, well, what is this Constitution? And they'll explain. But I'm telling you now, because I've been through this, I go to the Fifth Amendment to what they call the United States Constitution. Because that's what the code book says I'm supposed to do. Use the laws that you are given to use. You use your own law, that's probably not going to work unless you attach it to the laws that directly or indirectly some white supremacists have said they're willing to accept. Otherwise, you flying blind. You ain't going to get nothing nowhere. I mean, anytime you dissatisfy the white supremacists and you're black on planet Earth in 2023, and they are really dissatisfied with your comings and goings and what you're doing and what you're asking for or what you think you want. If they are really dissatisfied, you're not going to get nothing because they got everything. Everything that's worth having. It's something that you want. You said you lost a job, you're going to lose them all. if you think you can confront them on their job. It ain't going to work. You have to use what they give you, and that'll work, because they don't want to shoot themselves in the foot. They're not going to abolish the Constitution, I don't think. They'll give you what you want before they'll abolish the Constitution, because it's their Constitution. They wrote it, directly, indirectly. Now, I'm not saying that all the people that had something to do with the Constitution and the people who have something to do with it now are racist, but I'm saying the racists have more power than the Constitution itself, because the racists and the system of white supremacy make all constitutions that have anything to do with non-white people. They are the masters of them all. So it's nowhere to run but to them, anyway. Mm-hmm. Can't run around them. So I hope that answers the question for you and for a whole lot of other people. If you're in the Northwestern Hemisphere and you come under what they call the United States Constitution, that is the book that you go to, along with Terry and Neely Fuller's book. That's what I recommend. And you make the two come together, the two books work together for you. But you're going to have to take into consideration, for sure, in the Northwestern Hemisphere, the United States Constitution, or you are guaranteed to lose. Mm-hmm. Fifth Amendment in your case.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. That you said the Fourth Amendment, or did you mean the 14th Amendment?
14th Amendment and the Fifth Amendment.
The 14th and the 15th
both work
Amendment?
Together. Most of the lawyers, if you would talk to black lawyers, they'll say the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment is two of the strongest amendments that black people have. You can read them over and over again and work with them and learn what they mean. And I think it's the Fifth Amendment that mentions, I haven't looked at it lately, that mentions compensation.
Okay,
right.
I'm looking at the 14th, and it says passed by the Senate on June 8, 1866, and ratified 2 years later on July the 9th, 1868. The 14th Amendment granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved people, and provided all citizens with, quote, equal protection under the law. Now, the 15th Amendment, you said...
no, I didn't say 15. Oh,
okay.
But you're saying 15.
Yeah, okay, because I was trying to make that connection, because when you said the Fourth and the Fifth Amendment...
No, I didn't say Fourth. Here's what. The Fifth. Number 5.
Right. Yeah, I looked at that. Anyway, all right. Okay.
I think the word compensation is in that Fifth Amendment.
It is in the Fifth? Okay.
Fifth, number 5.
Yeah,
yes,
number
sir.
5. Okay, just to make sure so we can be clear, because we want to be clear
yes.
on that. Yeah, let's see here. Fifth Amendment. Okay. The Fifth Amendment says no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or predicament of a grand jury, except in cases of arising in land or naval forces or in militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense. Now, that's in the Fifth Amendment. So
doesn't say anything about compensation?
Not in that one. That's the Fifth. And let me go to the Fourth. Let me go to the Fourth so that we can be clear, because we want to be clear. The Fourth Amendment says this. What is the Fourth Amendment in simple terms? It says Oh, that's real good, Mr. Bobby. Yeah, there we go. It says the Constitution, through the Fourth Amendment, protects people from unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. The Fourth Amendment, however, is not a guarantee against all searches and seizures, but only those that are deemed unreasonable under the law. So I didn't see where anything said compensation down there, but this is just a small example of that. But we'll move on from that one.
I'm looking at the Constitution right now, and Amendment V, which is 5, and I see down at the bottom, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation.
Now, where's that at?
I'm looking at.
What amendment is that, Mr.
B. B as in Victor.
V as in Victor. Amendment
the last
V.
word in that amendment is the word compensation, unless it's something incorrect about my eyesight.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking at right now.
That's what you're looking at. Okay, all the way down there. Okay.
Amendment B. The last word in that amendment is the word compensation, period.
Okay. Compensation.
Now, are you looking at the same thing I'm looking at?
No, I just read the top 2 lines over there. But if you say that's in there, I'll check that out later. We'll move on with that.
Okay.
Because you say you're looking at that, so okay. I'm
looking right at it. I have the Constitution right here on my desk.
Okay. All right. We'll go from there. Let's go to John in Houston. John, you're on with Mr. Fuller.
Grand risings, gentlemen. Houston, we have a problem. Thank you for the time this morning, Mr. Bobby. Greetings and blessings to you and to our great elder, Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. The persons that I will mention is in response to his question about the greatest minds, whether people will argue that they are or not. Kimberly Crenshaw is attached to critical race theory. Nicole Hannah-Jones created the 1619 Project with the New York Times. Dr. Ibrahim X. Kendi is supposed to be famous for something he's calling e-racism or an anti-racism movement. And Ta-Nehisi Coates is being credited with initiating much of the public discussion about reparations at this point in time. Whether or not these be the individuals that you choose to be at a panel or collection of the supposed greatest minds, when a problem was not created by a particular group of people, why is it that it's incumbent upon them to solve it? That's first. And then the second follow-up question, either for you, Mr. Bobby, or Mr. Fuller, is that when you call this the quote-unquote race problem, and it's not a problem to so-called white people, it is not negatively infecting so-called non-black people, and the only people seem to have the problem is so-called black people, how is it you're going to convince them? It's kind of an extension of Cleo's question, Mr. Bobby. How do you extend the problem to people so it becomes theirs and there needs to be either rectification or a solution? And I'd like to hold on to listen to the elder's response.
Okay.
Both of you have a wonderful morning.
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
If I understand the question, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You talk to the people. I mean, we all say that there is a race problem, so we should talk to what is called the superminds. I mean, there are people on this planet who are smarter than other people. We start with that. Find out who these people are. Every last one of them. It might be a number 12 people. It might be 30. But then even out of the 30, you would do a culling process. If it's 30 of the people who are known to be problem solvers, you give them a problem, they'll solve it faster than anybody else. See, not people who are just eloquent at describing the problem. Oh, we got people falling all over each other doing that. All right? I've been trying to join that crowd. I mean, trying to, know what the problem is and have some suggestions. I've been doing that. I'm doing that right now. But this is a suggestion. Find the people, whomever they are, whether they're in Japan or whether they're on top of some mountain somewhere in some place nobody never heard of, and they say, hey, this is one of the best minds in the world. They're not known, but they're going to be known because they're going to solve the biggest problem in the world, and that's the race problem. So it might line up to be just 6 people or 4 people. And you say, okay, everybody else just shut up and sit back and listen to these 4 people. This is it. We've spent 2 or 3 years trying to find out who they are. But these are people who are known to just stroke their beards or comb their hair, or if it's a female, whatever she does, and think about it for 2 or 3 days, whatever the problem is, and they are known to come up with these solutions. They don't play around. They don't go into a whole lot of long arguments and consultations and all like that. These people are super brains. And we have seen evidence of people who have what you call excellent brains. And that technology we have right there in our hands and whatnot, somebody thought of this. That cell phone or whatever, that iPad. Somebody thought of that. And it wasn't no lame brain. That took some thinking to do that. Somebody who's really doing some serious thinking. Somebody who's doing some serious what? Planning. All right? It doesn't just come about somebody just sitting up there half drunk and just did all that. This all came together. Or maybe it did. But you look at the record, these are serious people who can handle serious things. No amateurs. No people who are just kind of playing around, finding something to do, like many of us are like that, just finding something to do. No, these are people who are problem solvers. They solve our problems, things that we cry about. They come, we go to them, and they know how to solve the problem. Not all the problems, but they know how to solve some problems. Otherwise, no problem would ever get solved. That's the logic. Okay, we want to find out who are the best people to get to solve the race problem. And everybody else just be quiet for a while and let them tell us. So that's what, we should do every day, like what I'm doing right now. We're calling for these people to step forward. White, non-white, we don't care what your classification is, what your gender is. Solve the problem. That's all that we should be talking about now. Like I started off this program today, saying pecking around the edges should no longer be acceptable to anybody. Don't go to another meeting where we're going to peck around the edges some more. No. Somebody come here with what they think is something that's going to really help to solve this problem. We don't come to the meeting to kind of kick it around to see if we can come up with something. No. We're going to come there with some ideas for a solution. Otherwise, don't have the meeting. Some ideas for solutions. Constructive results. Otherwise, we shouldn't be interested at all. Pecking around at the edges in 2023, and we should call it that, for lack of another term, or we can call it by another term. But that's what it means. Pecking around the edges, which is what we do now, which is what Neely Full is doing, really. I'm pecking around the edges. This problem is serious. It's big. It's a lot of people getting hurt. It ain't no ha-ha time. Hand clapping time. We've been getting away with that like too long. Hand clapping, hugging. No. Get your hands off. Back off. Ain't nothing funny. Nothing is funny. You can tell a joke, but after we say ha-ha, it ain't no laughing no more. That's as far as you go with it. Not no belly laughs, not rolling on the floor. This is not funny.
Okay.
I mean, this is solution time, serious solution time. Not little boys and girls like the white supremacists call us, playing in the sand. Because that's what we do.
Okay. All right. Okay, John wants to be left on. Thank you, John. Let's do this. Going back to that Fifth Amendment, I'm looking at, what is this? ConstitutionCenter.org clauses. It says that what is the Fifth Amendment just compensation clause? It says, while the federal government has a constitutional right to, quote, take, end of quote, private property for public use, the Fifth Amendment's just compensation clause requires, this is in bold letters, requires the government to pay just compensation, interpreted as market value to the owner of the property valued at the time of the takings. Okay, so that's what it's saying about compensation. All righty, let's go to Toussaint, Brooklyn. You are there. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. I hope you guys are having a great afternoon. Great morning. Look at me. Mr. Fuller, I had a quick question in regards to having a care mate and black male-female relations. And you said previously that under the system of white supremacy, trying to engage in a relationship, specifically a marriage, things are not going to be what they should be. And I just wanted to ask you if you'd be able to elaborate on that a little bit more and kind of explain, or at least give some advice or suggestions as to maybe how you or others you know have been able to have a constructive impact on reducing conflict in your relationships, whether they be with care mates or even friendship-wise, but specifically just for trying to have a relationship under the system of white supremacy with a non-white woman.
It's not going to work the way it ought to. That's a guarantee. That's what you go into any relationship thinking, according to the code, which is based on logic. The logic says, under the system of white supremacy, when it comes to interaction between people, nothing is ever going to be the way that it ought to be. Have that in mind anytime you interact with anybody. It's not going to be the way it ought to, the way it should be. It might meet your expectations if your expectations are kept. I don't call it, a lot of people say you have low expectations. No, you have accurate expectations. And in the system of white supremacy, in any so-called relationship between people, white or non-white, nothing is going to be the way that it ought to be. This is what white supremacy does. It's not an ideal situation when it comes to interaction between people. The system of white supremacy is very efficient when it comes to interaction between people and things. It's the most successful system, according to the evidence, ever thought up in the minds of people. But it makes a mess of relationships. That's all relationships. So never expect to have any kind of relationship to be the way it ought to be with any person, anywhere on the planet. Even when it looks like it's the way it ought to be, it's still not the way it ought to be. The white supremacists won't allow it. They will not allow relationships of any kind between white and white, between white and black, between black people with each other. It's not going to work the way it ought to. It'll work, but at a very different level from what it should be. And that's what it is when it comes to personal relationships. The If you think you're going to get that ideal relationship with, one person and another, and what you call a so-called romantic relationship, a marital relationship, no, it's not going to be the way it ought to be. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Even when it looks like it's working, it's something you don't know, or it's something you're not taking into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't have that type of criteria. You can't make that kind of criteria in the system of white supremacy. The system of white supremacy is devoted to what? Mistreatment.
Mistreatment, yeah.
And everybody is taught at some level or another to engage in some form of mistreatment, even if it's no more than just a harsh word every now and then. But it's not going to be. If you'll get a few things to work, and then there'll be some things that they'll work sometime maybe, but it'll be all over the place. You don't know where it's going to come from.
Mm-hmm.
But at some level, you are not going to be able to have a mateship, what the code calls a care mate. That's why I say black people don't have no such thing as husband and wife. You can't have no husband and wife in the system of white supremacy. You're a prisoner of war. Ain't no such thing as that when you're a prisoner of war. I got a wife. I got a husband. You have a prisoner of war care mate. You're just prisoners of war. But you can't determine nothing about your destiny. Those white supremacists determine both of your destinies. That's why you can't guarantee nothing. Sitting up there taking some vows. This is so-called Valentine's month. February is also Black History Month. And one thing you ought to know about Black history, under the system of white supremacy, you ain't got no relationships at all that's going to make sense in the system of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty.
Oh,
Thank
can I
you.
stay on the line, please, Mr. Bobby?
All righty. Let me see here. Toussaint, stay on the line. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Toussaint. Okay. Let's see here. I had it right here. Let me get it back up in here. Okay. Okay, Mr. Fuller, this is from Bryant. Says this, Mr. Fuller. He says, why do black people push voting together but not building together when clearly voting has not produced anything for black people? Is it because white supremacists have traveled the globe and set up a democracy where everywhere they have went, because as long as black people believe in democracy, they will never pursue revolution? And what they realize democracy isn't working, they try to start a revolution, and the white supremacist does everything in his power to derail the revolution. So the question is it because white supremacists have traveled the globe and set up a democracy where everywhere they have went, as long as black people believe in democracy, they will never pursue revolution?
Well, it's a kind of a convoluted question, but I think I have the core of it. First thing is, I don't know what a democracy is, so I can't even consider that. I can't even talk about that. That's something I'll have to ask people, and they'll give me an answer. But there's one system of government on the planet, in answer to the question, according to the evidence, which is based on logic. The system of white supremacy doesn't have anything to do with Republicans, Democrats, democracies, communism, socialism. The system of white supremacy is world government. Get rid of all the rest of those words. They're too confusing. That's why. You just get rid of them. And when other people use them, you just ask, what does that mean? Because I don't know what that means. I don't know what, republic, Republic of China. I don't even know what a republic is. Tell me. All right, that's what you have to ask people, because that's what the code says. When people use words, have them describe exactly what those words mean, not just some words that are just thrown around. I don't know what democracy means to this day. I mean, I talk to this person, I get a whole lot of this, that, and the other. Government by the people. And they say the federal government. I don't know what any of that means in the system of white supremacy. There's one government on this planet, and I make the name of that government clear. The system of white supremacy. There's no other government. None. Now, I either told the truth or I lied, because that's what Neely Fuller's saying with his crazy self. And that's what I repeat on the highest mountain or any Supreme Court, whatever that is. I would say that's the government of the planet in 2023. Name another one that means anything. These are just some words. But when you say the system of white supremacy, you got the words. And that's all the words. You don't need no more words to describe systems of government because there aren't any other than that one. I'm saying that right now. Now, I'm either, and for people who say Neely Fuller has lost his mind completely, they can just hang up, or if they're reading my book, stop reading, because that's the position that I'm taking. And I'm saying that can be backed up by all the evidence that you can come up with. I don't care what name you call it. So sometimes when people ask questions, they're using traditional words that they have been given. I'm not using the traditional words that I've been given, except to reject out of hand every meaning that I've ever heard all these other so-called governments consist of. Banana Republic government. I don't know what that means. I've heard a lot of people say, well, it has a lot to do with bananas. All right? It has a lot to do with trade. And it has a lot to do with, I say, does it come under white supremacy? That's my question. They say, yeah, well, the people got, white supremacy is everywhere. Well, white supremacy is everywhere. What are we dealing with all these other words for? You got too many words to describe the same thing. Fix your mouth to say white supremacy. Period. Fix it. Fix it. And keep repeating that, because that's what we got. We ain't got all this other stuff. Democracy, this and that, and Nazism. Call it. Nazism is white supremacy.
Yes, sir.
My goodness. I mean, get the word straight for once. For once. I mean, all the intellectuals got thousands of words that say white supremacy, but they won't call it that.
All righty. Got to leave it there because we are way over for the first hour. We have gone into the second hour. So let me end the first hour for those of you that will have to go. Thank you for the listening for the other 3 minutes that we went over, but thank you. But for those who will stay, we have a second hour of the counter-racist culture with Mr. Neely Fuller, which will begin in 5 seconds. All righty. Thank you, and welcome to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. We thank you again for listening, and the contact number, as you well know, but for those who are new, here's the number, 516-453-9921. A comment, and please, ma'am, please, sir, make it brief. Please make it brief so that we can, Mr. Fuller can understand the question and then give you the appropriate suggestion of an answer. If you're a new caller, you call that number, and please be sure to give the call screener your name, and they will let me know, and then you will have a pathway to be heard for your question. So you don't have to be scared. You will be heard today. You can also join the chat room. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com. You want to click on programs, and when you do that, the Produce Justice show will come up. And so you click on that, and then the chat room is available, and you can go in there and do your thing. A lot of conversation in the chat room. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and I will give you a symbol that lets you know that I have received it. It probably will not be read on today's program, but in a future program it will be read, and I will also let you know that. Let's see. Mr. Fuller was on the Carl Nelson Show last week. If you missed it and want to hear it, ProduceJustice.com has the entire time that Mr. Fuller was on our website, so you can check that out at ProduceJustice.com. You can do that, and any books and materials that you get or want to get about anything that Mr. Fuller is speaking about, you can go to ProduceJustice.com. That's ProduceJustice.com, and you can get all the books and materials there, and even past shows. Okay. All righty. Let's go back to the phone lines. And Corey, let me see if I can get you in here. Corey, yeah, we go. Corey, Milwaukee. Go ahead, Corey.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby. Greetings, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, in what you have described and what I also experience as being us, all people in a state of insanity, with this being the accepted status quo, have you experienced pushback when you try to stick to the 4 wants, the 4 questions in your interactions with people? Have you been, for example, called insane when you try to stick to counter-racist logic?
I've been called crazy. Sure. But I just say, well, am I telling the truth? See, I ask a question. You have to know what questions to ask when people say things. And that takes practice. You can take the ones that I have in the textbook that I try to use as a guide, but you're supposed to be thinking. That's why I say thought, speech, action. The textbook for victims of white supremacy said we have to learn how to think. And you think by doing what? Taking whatever someone says about something. People are teaching you all the time, and you just listen to what they're saying. And then the strategy is you ask questions about what they said the last time. If they say that you said something, if they say that you're crazy, okay. Now, what would you say in a case like that? Someone calls you crazy. You'll say, what do you mean by crazy? And wait for the answers. Don't argue about the answers. Just be ready with the next question. The code book, logic, the logic of the universe says, and everything that I write is supposed to be based on logic, universal logic, everything, without exception. Otherwise, it's going to fall flat. I guarantee you that. So you want to know anything about solving problems, it's always through the process of questions and answers. So stay in the question and answer to your question. Stay in the question and answer lane. And you don't move to the second question before you have taken care of the first question. So when someone says, for example, you're crazy, just be polite, keep your voice low, like I haven't been doing on this program, which is a violation. Keep your voice low, Fuller. Stop shouting. You don't get things done like that. Okay, but get back to the point. Ask a question. And you always ask a question about the last thing that the person said, so you can keep order in your conversation. What do you mean when you say, I'm crazy? And listen for it and accept the answer, because you already have your answer. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for the other person's answer. That's how you communicate in the most effective manner. And then when they answer that question, then you move on to your next question, but only after they answer that first question. What do you mean when you say that I'm crazy? And then let them answer. And if they give you an answer, your next question may be, well, how do I get to be something that's not crazy? According to you, not according to somebody else. That's the person you're talking to. That's what you tell them. According to you, sir. According to you, ma'am. How do I get to the place where I'm not crazy? And like I say, if you can keep using that technique, it's real easy. Just listen to the last thing that they said and then have a question ready for that last thing that they said. And if you don't have a question right then, think of one before you get back into the conversation. That might take 2 weeks. But no matter how long it takes, every question has an answer. And every question has a correct answer. It's just a matter of finding out what it is. And it'll always, through the process of questions and answers, don't forget this, and this is for everybody who's listening. The process of solving problems, any problem, is always through the process of questions and answers. Always. So if you got any kind of problem, just keep asking questions and getting answers to questions. And it'll take everybody right where they should be. That's a guarantee. It won't take everybody where they want to be, but it'll take everybody, that process will take everybody right where they should be. That's guaranteed to work.
All righty. From the Gmails, and this way down in, I guess it's down in Australia. This is Tremaine. Says this. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. My question for you, Mr. Fuller, is in regards to your personal family history. Have you ever found out your family lineage via DNA test or any of the sort? I'm in the process of finding out mine and just was wondering if you have done the same or want to do the same. Thanks again, Trey from Sydney, Australia.
I've thought about doing that in answer to the question, and I came to the conclusion, like I have in the textbook, when people ask me, what is my background? Because I've asked that when I've applied for jobs and all like that. And I've always thought about that word background, and then they'll say legacy, and it's, I guess it's dozens of words that just mean where'd you come from and all of this. I mean, it kind of alludes to the same thing. Who are the people in your background? What did your grandfather do? So, and sometimes they just say, what is your family history? That's the question. I've seen that on paper. All right? So I just broadbanded, as you might say. I gave a codified standard answer for it, for myself. Now, other people can use it if they want to, because it's in the code book. Or if you don't, then you can go the long way around. I say my history, if you're talking about Neely Fuller's history, my history, and this is for the record, is everything that ever happened before the beginning of time and since, unquote. Boom. That's all. Now I can move on to something else, because in answer to the question, that's how I answer that question. You see, in other words, codification is not pecking around the edges. It's slam dunking every time. Basket, all the way, no net. That's how codification at its best is supposed to be. I'm not saying I always do it at its best, because otherwise we'd have this problem solved. But when people ask me about ancestry and all like that, that's where I'm going. That's officially, too. My history is everything that ever happened, and I'm telling the truth, before the beginning of time and since. Everything that ever happened is nearly full of history. And I'm not lying. And I'm not being cute.
Okay.
I'm telling the truth. You want me to tell the truth? That's the truth.
That's the truth. Okay. All righty. Again, from the Gmails, this comes from the concept of where is Murder from? Anyway, yeah. Anyway, in so-called Central America, says this, dear Mr. Fuller, when is a gossip, and when a gossip is not a gossip?
Well, basically, it's when you're saying something in a conversation that doesn't produce a constructive result. Now, that's the conclusion I came to for telling people in a fast explanation, an efficient explanation, or an answer to that question. What is gossip? Okay? Because different people have different ideas. And basically, like in the code book, starting with, you don't say anything about anybody that you wouldn't say if the person was standing there hearing you say it. If you wouldn't, in other words, they call it talking behind your back. That's basically what gossip is. Anything that you say about anybody, you should be willing to say to the person or in that person's presence where they heard it. If you're talking about that person, get in the habit of that. And if you wouldn't say it, don't say it. If you wouldn't say it, that person heard you say that. That's gossip. Don't gossip. That's one of the 10 stops in the code book. One of the 10 basic stops that black people should follow at all times. Don't participate in gossip. Don't say anything about anybody that you wouldn't say if the person was standing there hearing you say it.
Okay.
All right. That's an excellent guideline.
Yes, sir. Okay, special announcements from Robert and the Gatewood brothers. By the way, Robert, that was a good video, you five brothers. Anyway, it says, he said this, if you have any questions or feedback regarding the show, send a message to contact@producejustice.com. Your feedback helps us do better, as we are all still learning. Thank you, Robert, Sharon, Moon Pie, and all the staff, because that is our aim, to do better. Okay. Swa, L.A., you're in the house. Wait a minute, see if I can get you in here, Swa. Now, there we go. Good morning, Swa. You are there. Go ahead, my brother.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby. Greetings, Mr. Jr. I'd like to stay on the line. Mr. Jr., Valentine's Day, white and non-white people celebrating and being very serious and emotional about this holiday. Is this making the system of white supremacy bigger?
Well, if it produces a constructive result, if they can't point to the constructive result, why bother? Why take up people's time and energy doing something that's not going to produce a constructive result? That's why I say it always comes down to those two words, constructive result, CR. Or you can add CRT, since that's a kind of popular thing to say. Some type of CRT is kind of volatile. So you have critical race theory, CRT. You can have the constructive results truth. That's CRT. It's another type of CRT. Or it might be the same thing. Depends on how you want to look at it. But CRT, you can have a lot of CRTs. According to the code, the latest contribution, piggybacking on the critical race theory, you can say constructive results truth. So, Valentine's Day. What is that all about? Well, does it produce constructive results? So if you get constructive results in every area of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, you get the constructive results, something different from what you have now in all areas of activity. If Valentine's Day and quote-unquote celebration of it gets constructive results out of people's interaction with people, then go for it. Regardless of how it starts out, it's how it ends up. Constructive results. That's what counts.
That's what counts. Okay. All right, Swa. You're going to stay on the line, my brother. You are on the line. From the chat room, Freedom Culture Tech says this. Mr. Fuller has encouraged me to create my own dictionary of terms to help get through the day. This constructive activity helps with practical, logical thinking. All right. Freedom Culture Tech. Let's go to New York. New York has really been representing. And this is Tess. Tess, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Yes, sir.
First, I would like to thank Mr. Fuller, Mr. Bobby, the call screeners, and all those involved in making the show available to us. As well, a thank you to the listeners and those in the chat room. My question is as follows. It has been stated on this broadcast that the concepts of America, Africa, and Asia don't exist. Mr. Fuller, could you explain why this is true and provide an example? Thank you.
Yes, it's true because you give a definition to the word Asia, and you give a definition to the word Africa, and you give a definition, compensatory definitions, meaning making up for what's missing, to the word America. I call it the 3 A's: America, Africa, Asia. Now, what do these 3 words mean? What are you talking about when you say America? America did this. America did that. Africa is home. All kinds of different words that you attach to those 3 words. We're now entering Asia. You're now entering Asia. What is Asia? Well, there's a definition for it. So what you do in counter-racist science, you invent accurate definitions for old words. What I mean by accurate is something functional, something you can use to better produce a product that you need producing, and that product that is needed now, presumably, according to counter-racist science, is justice. So in answer to the question, I took the word Africa, Asia, and America and say these 3 words from now on mean justice. The three words. Anytime you say these three words, you are saying is the same thing as using the word justice. America means justice. An American is a person. A person. An American is a person. Not a place. It's a person. That does what? A person that does what? People do things. A person that does justice, practices justice. Africa is the same thing. According to whom? Neely Fuller. According to me, the way I understand it. I mean, if America doesn't mean justice, what does it mean? See, I ask you a question. Tell me what it means. But I'm saying, under oath, and sticking with it until I find something better, America means justice. Africa means justice. And Asia means justice. And if you're a person who is an American, you are a person that practices justice. That's logical. I'm an American. That automatically means I'm a person that practices justice. Mountains don't practice justice. Fields of grain don't practice justice. These are inanimate objects. It takes people to practice justice, because what is justice? Guaranteeing that nobody's mistreated. It takes people to do that. And guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. So the word African, the word American, the word Asia means people who practice justice. Now, I'm going further than that in answer to the question. What people on the earth right now practice justice? The answer is, according to the code and according to evidence, nobody. So Americans, Africans, and Asians do not exist. Because in order to be American, an African, or an Asian, you have to be a person that practices justice. And no people practice justice on planet Earth in the year 2023, in February, at this time. Nowhere on the planet. Because in the system of white supremacy, you can't have the system of white supremacy and the practice of justice on the same planet at the same time. That is impossible. So nobody practices justice. So you don't have any Americans, you don't have any Asians, and you don't have any Africans. These people do not exist. What you have is the system of white supremacy and its victims, and some white people who are not white supremacists. And that's all that you have.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Tess, from New York. Let me take a station break here. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and we thank you. We have about 30 minutes left in the show, and if you would like to get in contact with the show, just simply dial this number, 516-453-9921, and if you have a comment or VGQ short story, make sure you press the number 1 button so that you can get in line, and maybe if we have time, you will be heard. First-time callers, just do the same thing, but just tell the call screener after you give them your name that you are a first-time caller, and usually Mr. Robert will let me know that we have a first-time caller on the line, and you will be heard. So you can do that. You can also join the chat room by going to blogtalkradio.com, and then you want to click on where it says programs, the Produce Justice Show. You click on that, and then the chat room is available for you to get in there. I would ask that when you're in the chat room, sometimes I will, a selected message will come up or something that's been said, but do not use the chat room to ask me a question to ask Mr. Fuller, because I will not do that. That's what the Gmail is for, or the phone number that you can call in for. Some people do that, and some people may not know or understand the rules in the chat room, but that is the one major one. Okay. By the way, Mr. Fuller can be heard on his on when he was on the Carl Nelson show last week. That's at ProduceJustice.com. And speaking about that, Mr. Fuller, I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak about your books before we continue on with the program.
Yes, you can get the basic book, the 2016 version, and it has 2016 on the cover in small print, but you'll see it. That's the basic book. And if you want the additional volume to the basic book called the Compensatory Counter-Racist Codified Word Guide, you can get that as an addition, because it says down at the bottom of the cover of that book, the Word Guide, in addition to a textbook, workbook, a thought book, speech, and our action for victims of racism, white supremacy. Now, this is just an addition to the 2016 version. The 1984 book that you will probably see at that website, ProduceJustice.com, is the original of the 2016 edition. And some people want that just because they want it. Actually, the 2016 version is an updated version of the 1984 edition. So I want to make that distinction, because a lot of the things that are in the 2016 edition just about covers, duplicates what was in the 1984 edition. I want to make that distinction, because you'll see a lot of things that are in the updated, revised, expanded edition. That's why it's called. It's revised, which means it's carrying over a lot of the things that are already in the 1984 edition. So, of course, that's just the original. Some people, for some reason, want the original. But the 2016 edition is the updated edition that has most of what's in the 1984 edition. But you can get all of the volumes, or just one of the volumes, or the basic volume, 2016, and the Word Guide by going to ProduceJustice.com. That's ProduceJustice.com. And the book is designed for the individual person. So you don't have to be a member of any kind of organization. You can be members of organizations, but as a member of the organization, it might help the people in your organization to function better. But it's not for organizations, because the book is directed toward the individual victim of white supremacy, so that you become an organization as one person. In other words, to use a cliche, you're like a one-person army. I mean, you're not looking for anybody else to help you do anything. You know what to do in the circumstances that you're in. You don't have to go and get a committee and all like that, like the white supremacists expect black people to do. Well, how many people do you represent and all like that? They ask these type of questions, and your answer will be, I represent myself. I'm an army of one, because that's all that's needed. I know what to do, in this circumstance without having to check with anybody else. I know what to do. I know what to say. That's what this book is designed, is supposed to help you do. That you don't keep looking for a committee of this and that and the other. You are the committee. You do what the committee would do and do it a whole lot better. That's what this book is supposed to be aimed for, helping the individual person to solve individual problems. You are an individual person. You don't want to be half a person, and you need to have a quarter of another person and this, that, and the other. And you become stuck with a thing called logic, not with an organization that can be broken up. Logic doesn't get broken up. So it's you and logic. That's your companion. That's the only companion you need. Mm-hmm. And that's what the book is supposed to be designed to help you be.
Yes, sir.
The individual person, the individual victim of white supremacy.
And we can get the book by going where now?
Going to producejustice.com. Produce justice, which is what you're supposed to be trying to do if you're on the planet. Producejustice.com.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. 2 notes before we go back. It was mentioned earlier in the program, I think in the first hour, about there was, I guess, a shooting in Massachusetts. It could have been. I wasn't aware of that. But I am aware that there was a shooting in the state of Michigan, East Lansing, Michigan, where an alleged black man, and I don't have the full details on that, but killed at least 3 people and injured 5. It may be updated since, at least since I've been on the air. I don't know what the latest update is, but the whole campus was in lockdown for quite a bit of time last evening, this morning. So I don't know the latest on that. If somebody knows the latest on that, maybe they could inform me of that. But if the correction would be made, like I said, I don't know if there was something done in Massachusetts, because it seemed like every day there's a shooting somewhere people doing all kinds of stuff. The second thing is this a question for you, Mr. Fuller? And I've heard you mention this before many, many times about tell the truth and don't lie. Before we continue on with the show, why is telling the truth one of the first steps in the dismantling of white supremacy?
Well, the first thing you do is find the truth. That's the difficult part. Telling it is easy, all right? But find out what is true. Just like you just mentioned something a while ago. I saw MASS. I thought they were talking about Massachusetts. But as it turns out, I got that in error. Okay, I started off the program in the last hour talking about I heard something about something happening in Massachusetts. But it wasn't Massachusetts. It was a mass shooting.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were talking about a shooting in Massachusetts.
Yes.
So I led somebody to believe something that wasn't true. See, so in answer to the question, make sure that you know what you're talking about, Fuller. All right? And so we all should do that. Find the truth. And then tell the truth, but tell the truth in such a manner that it produces a constructive result. Because you can tell the truth and not produce a constructive result. So you have to choose your time, place, circumstances, and the manner in which you tell it. And the frame of reference, context. And the textbook for victims of white supremacy talks about context. Context meaning the circumstances under which you do it. You do it in such a way that the circumstances are guaranteed. If you're going to release the truth, you do it in such a way that under the circumstances where it will be understood and produce what? A constructive result. And that's the main thing you look for in any move that you make. What was the constructive result? You told the truth, but when you told it, did you get a constructive result? So you have to anticipate what the constructive result is going to be before you even tell the truth. But first of all, you make sure that you find out what the truth is, and not that you are carrying on something that's not true. You definitely don't want to do that, because something that's not true, when it spreads, you got confusion, and confusion is deadly for everybody involved in it. You should never have a situation where you add to the confusion.
Yes.
And not revealing truth in such manner that it produces a constructive result, produces chaos, confusion, and everything is non-productive. You can't produce justice if you got a lot of confusion.
That is absolutely correct. Okay, thank you, Mr. Fuller. Okay, here he is. He's been a long time, but the man is here. Stan the Man from Pennsylvania. Hello, Stan.
Hello, good morning, gentlemen. I just want to make sure you can hear me first before I begin.
I can hear you, sir. I hear you.
Okay,
I hear you very clear.
Just want to make sure. Okay, just want to make sure. My apologies. The first thing I wanted to say is I had a VGQ, and it's very simple. A lot of times, people can be very critical of black people and their condition here in this country, this land that we live. And I just say to them, you cannot judge black people in America until you understand the complete and total history of black people in America. And typically that stops it. People will stop and think and say, wow, okay, all right. So I just wanted to say that. The question that I have is, the Super Bowl just happened a couple of days ago, and I was watching it. In the beginning of it, the pregame, all of the pomp and circumstance about America and how great America is and all of this. But for those of us who understand the history of white supremacy, it's all a bunch of nonsense to us. It's all ridiculous. But the question that I have for you, Mr. Fuller, is that you have been in the military, the Army and the Air Force, and I just wanted to ask you, is there anything that you can look at your experience in the military and say, that was really a good thing. That really helped me. That really improved my life. I am better because of this that I experienced in the military. And I would just like to stay on the line to hear your question.
Alrighty.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
All right. Mr. Fuller?
I'm going to go right to the point. All of my experiences everywhere have helped me on the kinds of questions that I ask about my experiences. It's taught me that a product called justice has not been produced. That's all it comes down to. And what's the best way to produce? First of all, to use logic. That's what my experiences have taught me. Now, what is logic? Cause and effect. That I see somebody doing something. Now, the effect of what a person does is going to be constructive or non-constructive. That's what I look for in every situation, regardless of where I am. So you don't let the labels get in your way. The military, or overseas, or when I was in quote unquote Asia, or no. Constructive, non-constructive. Divide all activities into those circumstances. When I latched on to that, I just happened to be wearing a military uniform. When I latched on to that type of logic, cause and effect, something is going to be constructive or non-constructive, that's all I needed from then on. I was around 26 years old. to talk about my own personal experiences. And really, but it really didn't. That's when I first got the concept in mind. But I did a whole lot of sloppy things and did a lot of things that were non-constructive. It didn't just register at age 26. It started taking root really about age 32. That's kind of getting on up there. And so then that's when it came together. Everything is just basically simple. It's either constructive or non-constructive. That's anything, any time of day, anywhere you are on the planet. And you just stand back and look at things and ask that question. Is this constructive or is it non-constructive? And if it's non-constructive, try to stay away from it, or any type of environment that produces non-constructive results. Constructive results, those two words, all these other words, America and this and that, and, you know, and whether or not this person, you know, is suitable for that, and it's all over the place. That is what I call pecking around the edges of problems. You just give a question that's right up front, in your face. Is this constructive or non-constructive? Yes or no? Which is it? I want out of here right this minute. I don't want to spend, 15 days doing what you call old-fashioned Negro foot shuffling and head scratching. We're still doing that. Negro, don't get to the core of nothing. Peck around the edges forever. And that's your role. We need to get out of that, all of us who are in it. I'm still in it, as far as I'm concerned. Sir. That's my own perspective. But constructive, non-constructive, that's all you got to remember.
Okay. I've noticed that, especially since Stan brought this up and you have mentioned about your service in the military, you have often referred to a sergeant that it seemed like to me that this sergeant, whoever he was, pointed you in the right direction, told you that he was interested in results or something like that. You've told the story a few times, but people seem to really like that. And it seems like, I think you said at first you kind of rejected him or didn't like what he was saying, but you began to think about what he was saying and really got you together. Do you remember that?
Sure. That's when I said I was 26 years old, and I was wearing an Air Force uniform. And it was a black sergeant that told me about myself. He said, Fuller, the way you go about doing things is, I notice you. He said, I make it my business to understand people. And I studied them. And I've been watching you. So you're the type of person, number one, who's running all over the world trying to find an ideal situation. He said, let me tell you one blank thing. There's no such thing as an ideal situation. You're not going to find it. Stop looking. If you want an ideal situation, you are going to have to produce it. That stung me like an electric shock because it was the truth. He was telling me the truth about myself, which when anybody does that, don't try to push it away. Grab it. My first reaction was try to push it away. But then I asked myself, is this true? And it was true. He said you're the type of person who, going down a highway at top speed, 70 miles an hour, at midnight, and your lights go out, and it becomes instantly dark. Then you're the type of person, Fuller, that grits your teeth, closes your eyes, steps on the gas, and hope that it all works out. and you're going down the highway now.
Mm-hmm.
And your headlights go out, all the lights go out, and there's no lights out there on that highway at all. Everything goes completely dark. And he was telling me that I was the type of person who would grit my teeth, grip the wheel real tight, and step on the gas as hard as I can and hope that everything works out. And he pegged me correctly. I examined myself. I said, yeah, that's exactly what I do. I don't believe in logic. That's not logical. I believe in, if you just be real dramatic, doing any kind of thing, any old way, that everything will work out. You say, well, that's not the procedure. That's not logical. See, the first thing you do is take your foot off that gas. And your mind's supposed to work real fast and try to remember where part of that highway has a shoulder. And try to inch your way toward it, because you can't see nothing. And traffic is still coming, and other people are doing the same thing. All right, maybe. Or you're out there alone, like that's why it's so dark. You don't get headlights from other people. You got to make that decision right quick. Stop this car. All right? And get out of the line of any other traffic that may be coming around that curve that you just came around, because that's the last thing you remember, because you can't see nothing. All right? That's being logical, not just doing any old thing, any old way. He could have added, like black people do, and hope that it works out. And so I went a long way around and answering that question. But then that's when I start thinking a simple thing, logic. Pull, look at things, stand back, take a deep breath and look at things. There's an old saying for it, look before you leap. Don't go around in that curve at 70 miles an hour and hoping that everything is all right around the curve and you can't see around the curve. The road may run out because somebody told you that somewhere along the way that road runs out, but they didn't know where.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So you remember that. You take that into consideration. And that's how I didn't think it. And a lot of black people, by our record, we show that that's where we are today under the system of white supremacy, because we don't like to do any thinking way down the road. What is it going to be like? What is my entire existence going to be like 7 years from now? And start planning it. See, that's what the white supremacists do that we don't do. We hate to plan anything. I know I did. Oh, something will happen. Things will come my way. We wrote songs about it. Things will come my way. No, why don't you make some of these things come your way? By making a plan. How about that? Oh, that takes too much thinking. Oh, man, you're too serious. How many times do you hear that from black people? Too serious. Ain't no such thing as a too serious black person nowhere. That's something yet to be.
All righty. All right, thank you, Mr. Fuller. Let's go to the ATL, and it's going to be True. True, let's see if I can get you on. True, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Yes, I had a question. I was wondering, how is it constructive for you to say white supremacy instead of just leaving it as what you put on the book, on the front of the cover, as racism?
because racism is a word that functionally means white supremacy. So you keep those two words together, those two, white supremacy, those two words plus racism. Racism is white supremacy. White supremacy is racism. So that you don't do what? Cause confusion. Because if you say white supremacy is a form of racism, then you're leaving racism out there. And who is a racist? Well, a racist is a white supremacist. And a white supremacist is a racist. You always use those two words together. They mean the same thing. And they never mean anything else. There's no such thing as a black supremacist anywhere or any other kind of members of a race. Other people are not members of races. That's something the white supremacists came up with. They came up with that idea of racism and then started naming people as members of a race. Neely Fuller has never been a member of a race. The white supremacists know that. But they say that's what I am, and that's what I call myself, that, because they forced me to do it. But I ain't never joined no race. I've never been a member of a race. My history says, and the historians tell me, that I might have come from some tribe or something like that. But most dark people, like most white people, say they were members of tribes or families or organizations or countries. But race is racism, and racism is white supremacy, in answer to your question. And that's how you should stick with it. It will always work for you because that's the truth. Racism is white supremacy, and white supremacy is racism. There's no other form of racism other than white supremacy, regardless of what anybody says.
Okay.
Because when you say that, you're telling the truth.
All righty. Thank you, True. And the last question, and we may go over on this today, but the last question is going to be to Nicole. She's going to be the last caller of the day. Nicole, let me see if I can get you in here. There you go, Nicole. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Nicole? Nicole. Okay. Okay, well, we didn't get you in here. Okay, well, guess what? We have come to basically the end of the this 2 hours program, and we thank you for listening. We made a lot of mistakes today, but like the announcement said, we're trying to get better. We really are. We do strive to get better so that we can present, the truth to you and try to limit the mistakes. In other words, we're still learning. Mr. Fuller, the final words for you in our last minute and 30 seconds.
Yes, I saw something on television the other day on one of the music channels. It said something. I just briefly got a little bit of it. It says, and I think it was Einstein that said it, Albert Einstein, the scientist. They said that all of his failures were really not mistakes because they taught him that they were failures. And that's how he came up with inventions. He eliminated all the failures. So the failures served the purpose of telling him what mistakes he was making in trying to invent whatever he was inventing or discover whatever he discovered. He said, so your failures are really a stepping stones toward success. Or something to that effect.
Something to that effect, yeah.
Yeah, he said, you go ahead and make those failures. I mean, and those are actually stepping stones. Mm-hmm. The more failures you eliminate, that don't leave nothing but success. That's his logic. So we can think about that.
Okay. I think I heard it said this one way, said that every piece that a master paints is not a masterpiece. He said that before you get to that, he said you don't see the mistakes that he makes. You just see the ones that are hung in the museums. And I thought about that. And that's true. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Fuller, and thank you, callers. Thank you, all the team. Robert, everybody. Thank you. Mr. Fuller, last word?
ProduceJustice.com.
All righty. Thank you, everybody. We hope to do better next week. Thank you.